spot on sports. If you turn on a basketball game lately, you can't help but watch a player driving or maybe sitting at the 3-point line and he jumps into a defender and he gets a foul call. And I know a lot of people are irritated. Go watch Harden at the Rockets. You'll see what I'm talking about. So the NBA has heard all the whispers, all the yells, the shouts. They're discussing possibly taking out this unnatural shooting motion in order to get a foul. What do you guys think about this movement? I'm going to start off with Jamar.
I think this is the NBA's opportunity, and, this is what they're trying to do in terms of, leveling the playing field. I think we've seen a reshaping of this league ever since, the 3-point line was put there, and then we have Stephen Curry. Now it's just, I don't know if y'all watch basketball, but it seems like it's a 3-point contest. And it seems like not only is it a 3-point contest, but it's very offensively heavy. There's not as many focusing on actually playing defense. They're more just saying, we're going to score more points than you. So I think the NBA is trying to give it some type of a feel of defense going on and some type of chance for the defender to actually be able to stop the offensive player, because we all know there's some players you just can't defend, but if they can just do certain other things or it's just impossible, like James Harden has done for years, then now you have a chance to defend them. So I think more than anything, not really the rule. I don't know if we can really incorporate that rule because it's been happening for so long, but more than anything, it's a sign from the league saying we're trying to get y'all to play more defense.
I think it's possible to make it a rule. It's just hard on how you word that. It's hard on how a difference of opinion can come in play with different referees seeing it one way and another ref seeing it another way. This is the same thing like you guys alluded to with James Harden getting 17 trips to the free throw line back in Houston off these same type of things. And so I feel like this is something that if you purposefully lean yourself into somebody trying to defend you in that way, then you have grounds to call an offensive foul there. I think it's something that the league is struggling to get containment on, and it puts the pressure on the referees on whether or not to call it or not. And so with that, now you have player defenders angry at referees for not calling it or for calling it. And then that frustration plays out later on in the game. And it's something that can get out of hand furthermore. I think we've seen that a time or two. And so I think the league has to do something about it. It's just a matter of how do you actually put it in writing and make it a rule in that sense.
Yeah, so I respect the NBA, and I applaud the initiative to try to cut down on this, because I do think it affects the brand and the quality of the product on the court when you have fans complaining and players complaining that it seems like and it seems like Trae Young has been the poster child for this, where players are just kind of seeking out these fouls. But I just want to say that it's kind of hard for me to see an actual plan or system that you can put in place to actually take this out of the game. One, we've seen kind of since the 90s and 2000s, there's been such a huge shift to benefit the offensive player, not just in the NBA really, but in all sports, but in the NBA that affects how you're able to defend them, right? And then so two, when you said, like Jamar talked about the more shooting on the 3-point line and then kind of the unnatural motions and different things like that. But that started with Kawhi Leonard when he got hurt against the Warriors with Zaza Pachulia, kind of the landing space rule. So that changed how you could defend the jump shot, because you had to give them space to land. So you can't even really jump and contest it, right? And then with, analytics and they're shooting more threes, that just became more of a thing. We saw how James Harden used to manipulate the referees kind of with his left hand getting up into the body, or he would come, step back and then kind of kick his leg out or fall into you and different things. But what I'll say is that the NBA is a superstar driven league, right? And these are superstar calls, right? We're seeing Trae Young get these calls, Luka Doncic get these calls, James Harden get these calls. The NBA has always been superstar driven, and superstars have always gotten calls that other players aren't getting. We're not seeing PJ Tucker get these calls, right? You know what I'm saying? We're not seeing Ben Simmons get these calls. So I think that it is a problem, but I think that this is a problem that the NBA has always had, because it's always been a superstar driven league. And you're going to continue to see Trae Young and players like that get these calls. And we've also always incentivized players who have sought out contact or initiated contact. And I think you're walking a very thin line when you start to basically tell these superstars, that have played this way their whole life from AAU up until the NBA, basically to change their games because you're no longer going to call it, when you've created this environment for players to foster their game in that way in the first place. So I don't think you can go from a defensive, physical, all hell WWE match, NBA, to anything goes AAU style NBA basketball, to, oh, I really don't like the decision we made and how it turned it out. Let's benefit the wing defenders again. No, I think that you have the product that you wanted and you just have to embrace it. You can crack down a little bit, but at the end of the day, it still comes down to referees and human error. And I think that this style of play is in the NBA to stay for a long time.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of this rule because I hate for me, it's a situation, John, you pointed out perfectly. Everything is set up to benefit the offense in all sports. And I just hate when I see somebody playing perfect defense and you jump to the left, knowing good you have to do that, or that's not in your natural shooting motion. And that's how you get a foul. It waters it down and makes me not want to really watch that style. And it is irritating. But the question I have for you guys is what I think it boils down to is that word unnatural. So I want to ask each of you, starting off with John this time, how much do you think referees will have telling what is a natural motion of shooting in real time?
I think it'll be hard. And like we kind of talked about earlier in our pre-production meeting, I think players are smart, right? They're so skilled, they'll adjust and they'll be able to make their motions look natural, right? But I think it's so hard, especially in today's NBA where there's so much high pick and roll, high screen action, right? Where you can't even really chase a player off the screen because they can come off the screen and just stop and jump up. And if you're literally there on the contact, right, that's contact. So I think it'll be hard. And I think, just from the nature of contesting a jump shot, jump in or getting under the player, trying to get in his airspace or whatever, you're always going to be situations where the player is going to be too close and they come down in their airspace. And I think players now have learned how to fall forward a little bit. So like I said, when it comes down to human error, I just think there's such a thin line. And I think that what you're going to see is the NBA try to overcorrect it. And then you're going to see a bunch of fouls not getting called, which is also going to contribute to the quality of the brand or lack thereof. So I think this is just, the NBA dealing with the problem they created.
Mia?
I think it's going to come down to the league having to make it a clear and concise type thing, to where you can't have so many opinions with it. And that's going to become a struggle because there is going to be so many opinions with it. And so again, it's going to be something that kind of slows the game down a little more.
I definitely agree. It has to be clear and concise because as somebody who has officiated in different sports, there's certain rules where there's so much gray area. And if they just give a bland rule for the referees to give, it's going to be so much inconsistency on a night in and night out basis. You're going to have a game where it's like, if this referee is calling it like this, that's how it's going to be this whole game. And then the next game is going to be totally different. And I think it's going to be so bad for the players, especially post conferences where they're talking about things like this, because it's like every single night they're having to change the way they play. And NBA players do too much consistency of practice to have to change every single night. So it's going to be very interesting how they write this rule, if they even do it, because I feel as though not only is it going to be inconsistent, I feel like not even fans and players are going to have opinions, but the referees themselves in their own groups are going to have totally different opinions on what they think is, an obvious call. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes.
And I just want to say really quickly, right? We're not talking about the NBA, but it's not just the NBA, because NBA basketball dictates how basketball is played everywhere else on all other levels. So if these are the NBA players, how they're playing now, this is also now how they're playing in college, how they're playing in high school, and how they're playing in AAU. So if you, because of what the NBA created with this offensive explosion, so if you try to go back on that and change that, not only does it affect the quality and the product of the NBA now, but it affects the players that are coming into the NBA, because that is a skill that has been developed and been used to boost offense that you're now trying to take away from these players. So that ultimately just affects the product of the NBA for years and years down the road to come. So, I mean, the NBA is in a tough position. I think they're better off just trying to police it a little better with the referees rather than trying to overcorrect. Because at the end of the day, people are still watching the NBA. People are still watching their favorite teams, and people are still enjoying the playoffs. So you got to try to find a way to correct it a little bit. But I think overcorrecting it only creates a bigger problem for the NBA.
Yeah, I think this is something that they take care of. I'm hoping it's something that they take care of. I think certain motions, like you hear me emphasize lunging side to side, I think that's something that you tell. A lot of people shoot straight up. So when they're jumping right or left, you can usually tell it's unnatural. But then you have some of them where it's close calls, and it will be human error because the ring always has been. But it's a very divisive issue. Do you like it? Let me know how you feel in the comments below. And we're not just accurate.